Neama, good to see you here. This is day 3. There's a lot to get to, but let's start off with this. Cassie testifying that Diddy kept her in a cycle of abuse and exploitation by threatening to release videos of her engaging in these freak-off encounters. This was graphic, a lot of this detail released today. What were the highlights to you?
Well, the highlights with respect to that were this cycle of control. And the way that Combs would control Cassie was with videos of these freak-offs. They weren't just for his sexual pleasure. And Cassie would reportedly ask Combs to delete them, and sometimes he would, and sometimes he wouldn't. Sometimes he would reference them when, they would have fights. Even after they broke up, talked about the skeletons on the iPads, and she was always terrified that he would release these videos publicly. And someone even approached her about a video that was out there on the internet, and she believed that it was a video of the freak off. And this is one of the many ways that Combs maintained control over Ventura.
Neama, the irony of this all is, about the videos in particular, they're going to be played for the jury in court. So the conversations they may have had, Cassie and Diddy, previously about, withholding them or releasing them, they're going to be front and center there in the court. The public will not be able to see these videos, but the jurors won't they?
Yeah, so the court today put up privacy screens, so the jurors are going to be able to see the videos, but the folks who are in the courtroom and in the overflow room will not. That's the compromise that essentially Judge Subramanian made in this case. So, in many ways, Diddy is responsible for his own downfall, not because of what he did, which is, of course, is the real reason, but in terms of creating evidence that is going to be used against him. So I'd say the two biggest strategic mistakes that Diddy made in this case is, first, not settling with Cassie Ventura. And today the testimony came out that he settled with her for $20 million, and reportedly he wanted to offer her only $10 million. Well, we paid that additional $10 million just a few days earlier, we may not even be here today. The second big mistake, of course, is recording those freak-offs, and that evidence will be played, and that, I think, will be the determining factor in this case, just like that 2016 video that we've all seen many, many times from the hotel here in Los Angeles. So that video evidence is going to be the most powerful.
Yeah, that hotel surveillance video now immortalized in a courtroom sketch by the artist there, which I thought was interesting. Back to the settlement, though. We did finally learn it was divulged in court today. Diddy paying Cassie $20 million in the settlement. This was settled within 24 hours. How important of a piece of the testimony was that today? That was obviously a civil suit that was settled between two parties, but it was settled quite quickly. We were speaking at the time that everyone involved in this case who was following it was so surprised that Diddy settled that quickly, and now we know the amount.
I was shocked that Diddy settled so quickly, and he didn't settle before. So in November 2023, Cassie Ventura was up against the statute of limitations in New York. The state had opened that window for her to file a lawsuit against Diddy. Many of these claims had run their course. They were barred by the statute. But because there was this window to file, Cassie and her lawyers entered into negotiations with Combs, and reportedly, he was only willing to pay $10 million, approximately $1 million for every year of abuse, and she wanted more. The reports at the time were 20 or 30 million. Now we know that number truly is 20 million. Cassie was forced to file the lawsuit to preserve her claims. Combs, of course, settled it the very next day, but it was too late. Lawsuits in this country are public. And once those salacious allegations hit the news media, other people came forward. And now we know there's approximately 100 accusers against Combs. But as far as this case is concerned, Andrew, I think it was important that the prosecution did two things. They brought out really two what may potentially be bad pieces of evidence. The first is the civil lawsuit. This is really not about criminal justice, but this is about money. Yeah. That argument is going to resonate potentially with some of the viewers and some of the jurors. The other key piece of evidence, bad evidence that the prosecution elicited today was Cassie Ventura's own violent outbursts, both respect to Combs himself, but some violent episodes involving others as well, including a young woman that she physically attacked. I think the defense will argue that Cassie Ventura was jealous. She admitted to being insanely jealous and that she was violent. There's going to be an argument both during the cross examination, which begins tomorrow, but as well as closing arguments that really Cassie was the instigator when it came to many of these violent episodes. Not saying I believe it,
Sure.
but I fully expect the defense to go in that direction starting tomorrow.
Yeah, and you can imagine, I mean, she's 8 months pregnant, the stress this is taking on her, the toll that it is taking while pregnant, while having to testify in this extremely graphic sense. You know, I want to play out some of this sound that we got today. Leaving court was her attorney, Douglas Wigder. He's pretty high profile as far as victims' rights go. So let's just play that. I want to get you to respond to it on the back end. Let's listen to this.
Thank you. Sir, how do you think she did?
Powerful testimony today.
What was the most powerful part of it?
Just the whole thing was powerful, and she told her truth. I wouldn't want to be having to do that cross-examination, that's for sure.
Are you worried about how she's holding up being pregnant and having to deal with all that stress?
It's always a concern, obviously, given that she's about to give birth. But
when is she giving birth?
In the coming weeks, but I'm not going to give a date, but as you can see in court, she's very pregnant. She's about to give birth, but she's holding up strong. I mean, having to recount what happened during those 10 years and beyond, and talking about her contemplation of suicide, really just very powerful.
What do you think really is the part that got her? It seemed like she really talked about their love. She really started to break down about how he just wasn't giving her what she needed, and she really felt that they were in love.
I think really just she was numb from the drugs that she was taking and everything that she had gone through, and she realized that she had to tell the truth. And she told the truth in November 2023 when she filed her civil complaint. She revealed that she settled that case for $20 million.
Were you surprised that she said that?
No, that's a fact. And now she's here in court to tell her truth here. So as I said, I've said before, we have great faith in the jury system. We're going to let the jury decide, obviously, Mr. Combs' faith, but today was just a powerful day. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Alex, he looks not that great leaving here sometimes.
Okay, so there you have it. That's Douglas Wigder, the attorney representing Cassie Ventura. Neama Rahmani with me still. Neama, your just thoughts. I know there wasn't that much there from her attorney, but Doug Wigder, he means business. He's a big deal, is he not?
He is. He's one of the best plaintiff's lawyers in New York. And look, maybe it's the former prosecutor in me and current plaintiff's lawyer here in Los Angeles. I might be a little bit biased, but I agree with Doug. It was very powerful testimony. So yesterday we heard really those graphic and salacious facts, the throwing up, the urine, the blood on the bed sheets. And we heard more of that today. We heard that Cassie Ventura was forced to participate in these freak-offs hundreds of times, even when she had UTIs. So many UTIs that even normal antibiotics like Cipro wouldn't work. And then she talked about the illegal drug use to disassociate and how she would like to use ketamine to just, give Combs what he wanted, but not really be there when she was going through the motion of these freak-offs. And then she talked about her prescription drug addiction, how she wanted to walk into traffic and kill herself. How now she's in rehab and going to trauma therapy. So she really broke down today on the stand. She had cried before, but today was, I would say, the most emotional moment when she was talking to her mother about the physical abuse that she suffered. So I agree with Doug, very powerful testimony. But as we've discussed, Andrew, this case is going to come down to cross-examination. The direct examination really doesn't mean a whole lot. We know and we expect Tenny Garagos to come after her pretty aggressively starting tomorrow. And this case may come down entirely to how well Cassie Ventura holds up on cross Thursday and Friday.
So let's talk about that cross and the strategy the defense might take. What will they use from the last 2 days tomorrow, do you think, in the testimony?
I think we'll see some of the things that they raised in opening, that Cassie chose to stay with Combs and she said that she loved him. I expect to see words of affirmation and loving text messages. She didn't leave, and many abuse victims do not leave. So this is something that the government anticipates. They have an expert witness who's going to testify to this, but this is all going to play into the issue of consent, that Cassie Ventura participated in these freaky sex acts because she enjoyed it and she loved her partner. That's going to be the argument. The second, of course, is going to be the violence that we talked about. That's going to be a big area of examination tomorrow.
So, Neama, if you're one of the 12 jurors who may or may not know that point you just raised, that victims of domestic violence, they don't always leave, they can't leave sometimes. But if you're one of these jurors who might not grapple with that question, how are you to make of that? Do you think some of these jurors might be thinking to themselves, well, why didn't Cassie just leave?
I think that is a fair question and a question that a lot of the jurors will have. A lot of the more conservative jurors, especially female conservative jurors, may be asking themselves, well, why did you even put yourself in that situation? What did you think when you were dating, a rich and famous entertainer, a rapper, a bad boy? Did you think that, it would be a different type of relationship? And they may say, I would never put myself as a juror in that situation. Look, and we've seen this same argument in other cases like Weinstein and cases involving sexual abuse, where people will say, you know what? If you truly did not consent the first time you were raped, why did you go back? It's really because you loved the lifestyle. You loved the glitz and glamour. You loved the individual. Not saying I agree with it, but this is a very compelling argument and the best argument that the defense has in this case. That Cassie consented to all of this. And any violence was because she initiated. So I think that's what Combs is going to argue here through his defense lawyers.
All right, Neama, just last point on this. She said today on the stand, quote, I feared for my career. I feared for my family. It's just embarrassing. It's horrible and disgusting. No one should do that to anyone. You're alluding to the fact, or at least intimating, that those words could kind of be twisted tomorrow, spun, and used against her by the defense, right?
They can. I mean, she was a relatively successful artist. She testified as she put out 9 of her 10 records. There was certainly some benefit to being with Combs. I mean, he was giving her gifts and she was enjoying the benefit of being his girlfriend. And going to the awards ceremonies and all the parties that only Sean Combs could be invited to. So I expect the defense to go after her very, very aggressively, use some of her previous inconsistent statements against her. And we're going to see if she holds up. I mean, it's going to be very, very dramatic tomorrow, Andrew. Probably the biggest day of trial so far, and certainly maybe the biggest day of the entire trial will be Thursday.
All right, Neama Rahmani, we're going to leave it at that. Can't thank you enough. We'll probably be speaking tomorrow. Thanks.
I can't wait. Thanks, Andrew.